Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
This morning, the BBC broke a story of an advert made by the Church of England to be shown before screenings of the new Star Wars film, which cinemas are refusing to show. The ad shows a number of Christians reciting the Lord's Prayer, and before the ban, it was granted clearance from the Cinema Advertising Authority and the British Board of Film Classification. Here it is.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name.
Thy kingdom come.
Thine will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day
our daily bread.
Forgive us our trespasses,
As we forgive those
who sin against us.
And lead us not into temptation.
deliver us from evil.
For thine is the kingdom,
Forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen.
Like it or not, well, the cinemas involved have decided not to show the ad. They say it runs the risk of upsetting or offending audiences. Should cinemas be God-free zones? Or is a short prayer at the pictures relatively harmless? Our question, are cinemas right to ban the Lord's Prayer? We'll talk about that in just a moment. First, Tommy went to the West End to see what filmgoers make of it all.
Do you watch the adverts at the cinema? Do you pay attention to them?
I do, yeah.
Well, not really. They're quite repetitive.
A lot of the time they just kind of wash over me, you know.
Well, I like the adverts. I think they're the best bit, usually, of the movie.
So imagine you're settling down for Star Wars and this comes on.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name.
What do you think so far?
I'm wondering why it's on at the cinema.
Yeah, it's unusual. Don't usually see this.
If you saw it in the cinema, is that okay?
Yes, it made me feel very joyful, actually.
Not offensive, it's not a problem, it's just showing that everybody can pray, I guess.
I'm not religious myself, so seeing religious things just make me a little bit uncomfortable.
I don't mind. It's just emphasising the idea of praying. In general, it doesn't actually have to be for Christianity, but it can be for different religions.
Should the Church of England be advertising their faith in the cinema?
I don't see why not, you know, everything else has got an advert, so why not the church?
There's a question mark on whether these religions should be allowed to promote at that level.
For me, this is blatant salesmanship at one level. It is blatant salesmanship, but obviously the more people that are engaged in religion, the better.
And what about other religions then? If you saw an advert for a different faith, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what us in Britain does. We celebrate all religions. I mean, there's loads of negative press at the moment about different religions, and that's not actually what the religion's about anyway. So to be able to see a side like that about other faiths would probably be quite good.
It would be fine, because it just encourages us to pray for our own religion. And I think at the moment, with all the things happening right now, prayer is like the perfect thing that we need. And it doesn't matter what religion you come from, if it's Christianity or whatever, it's fine.
Our question this week, are cinemas right to ban the Lord's Prayer? What are your thoughts? You can email, text, call or use social media to get in touch with us. Joining our panel this morning, Keith Porteous-Wood, who's Executive Director of the National Secular Society. Good morning.
Hello.
Sue Primmer, a former Director of Communications for the Diocese of Birmingham and former leader of the Church's Ecumenical Advertising Network. That's a mouthful. Morning. Good morning. And we also have Kishwar Desai, who's an author and columnist. Hello to you.
Hi.
Bishop Stephen, I'd like to start with you first. Do you understand why the cinema decided to refuse to show
Well, not
your
really.
little advert?
I mean, not really, if I'm honest. The funny thing is, when we approached them earlier this year, not only were they very supportive, they were actually offering us a discount. For some reason best known to themselves, they suddenly changed their mind in the last couple of weeks. As you know, you can't show any advert or film in the cinema without it being given a certificate. This one got given a U, by the way, which means unclassified. It means It's not going to offend anybody. You can show it to children. It also had to pass the advertising standards, you know, test. It passed. So the cinema, for some reason best known to themselves, just suddenly got cold feet.
Well, should I tell you why they don't?
Yes, well, they
they
discovered a
don't like
policy, but they didn't. The point is, they didn't have the policy 6 months ago when we approached them.
But to be fair to Digital Cinema Media, they say their policy is of not accepting political or religious advertising content for use in its cinemas. Some advertisements, unintentionally or otherwise, could cause offence to those of differing political persuasions, as well as to those of differing faiths and indeed of no faith. In this regard, they treat all political or religious beliefs
equally. Wouldn't it have been nice?
But
wouldn't it be nice when we approached them and when they offered us the discount, they'd have told us about the policy? Would have saved a lot of fuss for them and for us. So it's all, you know, they're just anxious, and nobody's going to be offended by this.
Keith, will anyone be offended by it?
Well, we totally defend freedom of expression, and we wouldn't have a problem if the film was shown. But I think there might well be. The people who are going to that film, the vast majority of them are going to be non-religious. They're going to have paid for an evening of entertainment, and I can understand how the cinema company would think, well, actually, we don't want to do something which might irritate them. And also, I don't think that the cinema company will want to be necessarily identified with any one religion as they would do if they screened this film.
But we get adverts for cars or chocolate bars or anything. We decide whether to take it or not, whether we decide to engage.
Absolutely right. I mean, the cinema company had already got bitten by screening adverts about the yes/no referendum in Scotland, and as a result of that, they'd made a policy that they didn't want to have issues which are of great personal importance to people and of opinion, and it's very different from the car.
I'm sure you'd agree, Keith, it'd be nice to have known about the policy.
Oh, absolutely, completely. Yeah.
Sue, what are your thoughts? It's crazy. OK,
I think it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, cinema goers are intelligent beasts. You know, the plan was that this should be shown in the lead up to Star Wars. You know, a great struggle of morals and ethics and the force for good. Don't tell me that people about to watch Star Wars haven't got the brains to discern whether or not they'd like to engage in prayer, particularly as your previous set of interviews were talking about, you know, at a time when we've literally got people praying on the streets in Paris, when people of all good faith, of all integrity, of no faith could do to understand. No, but, you know, this is a time...
This is particularly Church of England.
It is particularly the Church of England.
Selling the Church of England.
It's selling the concept of prayer, and no money is changing hands, unlike some of the big brands who are force-feeding us a diet of sugar advertising, which is what you normally see when you go to the cinema. But I think there's a serious point here where surely this is a moment where people of integrity should understand what faith truly is and should think about it, and that's what this ad was doing, an invitation.
It's an invitation to think, nothing more. What do you think?
Well, I object to it strongly because even though I do pray, and I consider myself a religious person, but I object to religion being treated like a commodity and being advertised, as it were. But I think far more dangerous is exactly what Sue said, you know, the power of good over evil and things like that. I mean, these are concepts which are okay. They belong in the cinema, they belong in your heart, but they do not have to be advertised through a particular religion, you know, because then it becomes almost insidious. It is like proselytizing. It is like saying, oh yes, you come to the church and, you know, you will get all this triumph over good over evil. And I think what happens with religion is that it is often used for people to, you know, depend on the power of divine intervention instead of taking on things which you must fight for. Yes, you must fight for the good, not necessarily through prayer, but often through your own determination to triumph over whatever circumstances come your way. So I think it gives a very sweet little pill to people. Say your prayers, go to church, and everything will be all right. And I don't think life is that.
Life is not like that, Bishop. And it's just
I feel like,
to people,
you know, with the
who've gone to a
greatest
Star Wars
respect, I
film.
feel like you're scrabbling around trying to find a reason to be offended. This is not proselytising, it's not selling the Church of England, it's not promoting a commodity.
But it is.
It's a prayer, and it's pointing you to a website with resources for prayer. And And it also touches upon other big issues, which I think most of us hold in common about what sort of world we want to live in, what sort of freedom of speech.
But that's exactly it. We live in a multicultural society,
Yes,
and therefore it would have been far more useful if there had been many other faiths shown in it. If you actually want to do that.
Well, let me answer that point.
Yes, and apart from that, what about the non-believers?
Well, other faiths are free, subject to classification, and advertising standard authorities are free to put things in the cinema. A few years ago, I don't know whether it was the Secular Society or the Human Society, put on that rather fun advert on buses saying there probably isn't a God, you know, don't worry, enjoy yourself. Was I offended by that advert? Actually, I thought it was a rather good little advert.
It was in 2005, wasn't it? It was 800 adverts on the side of buses.
You're free to do it.
You're free to engage.
When even the cuddly C of E is actually prepared to think about reaching for its lawyers, as we know, imagine how the cinema chain must worry if, having accepted this film, it might actually then be required. Excuse me, can I finish the point? It might be required to take films from other religions and indeed cults and have an awful time in court if it refused them.
That's the thing. That's what DCM say. They don't accept any religious advertising.
Well, that's what they're saying
anyone.
now. As they didn't say it a few months ago. Well, that's why we have film classification boards. That's why we have advertising standards authorities.
But good sense prevailed. I mean, ultimately they realised that they were opening up a Pandora's box, like you have faith schools.
The bodies that we have to regulate these things saw no problem.
OK, thank you, Bishop. I want to hear some of your thoughts at home, Tommy.
Yes, Sian. A lot of people saying that the cinema is a sacred place and no place for prayers. Here we have Miss Tosis, TNT, saying, would the Church of England allow videos on the theory of evolution to be played in churches over the festive period? Chill4 says, it shouldn't offend anybody, any creed, any race, because the words apply to virtually everyone. On Twitter, Tim saying, if advertisers are frightened of offending people with religion, then why have we had Christmas ads since July? And MGV Smith says, the Jedi Knights are selling their religion at Star Wars, so why shouldn't the Christians? Which force will win, Sian?
Who knows? Is that a good point, actually, that Christianity is often used in adverts, Keith, so to sell commodities? So why can't Christianity reclaim it and use it to sell itself?
Well, I think that was a good point about the... in churches, there are an awful lot, and in church halls, there are an awful lot of things that the church wouldn't like people to do. And this is just the reciprocal of that, I think.
There's a great advert at the moment. I'm probably not allowed to mention the brand, but there is a very expensive brand of bags who've made an advert all about the bag, in effect, being the baby Jesus and the king's coming to worship the bag. I don't know if it's ironic or funny, but what I do know is that advertising seems to me to be constantly putting up a moral framework. You know, a lot of the Christmas ads are all about Christmas is for sharing, or send a balloon to the man in the moon. How come it's all right for our moral frameworks now to be dictated by supermarkets and expensive bag manufacturers? It seems to me a very skewed view of what's meaningful.
Right, but how would you feel, though, if every faith and no faith decided to have cinema adverts? So every time you went to the cinema to watch a film, there were bags of people selling you their own religion.
That's what it means to live in a country where there's freedom of speech, freedom of religious expression, is that we all have a right to do it. Of course there are checks and balances. That's why we have the British Board of Film Classification. That's why we have the Advertising Standards Agency. So these things are deemed to be not manipulative, exploitative, dishonest, oppressive. That's why we have them, and we live in what's called a democracy.
It's a bit more sensitive in the...
Advertising is a form of brainwashing anyway, because you are being sold something, whether you're being sold it, you know, explicitly or insidiously. I think the danger we face in today's world is when we put religion out there, when somebody there is obviously selling one religion or the other, and that is the problem we are facing everywhere, be it Syria, be it here, be it anywhere.
You must agree to disagree, I'm afraid, because that's all we have time for on this discussion. It's a democracy. Thank you. Yes, exactly. Thank you very much, all of you.
I've been getting away with it all my